everything I've done, army sniper, cameraman, magician, have all got one thing in common.
Julian Mather has been an army sniper, a globe-trotting TV cameraman, a professional magician, a YouTuber with millions of views, a business builder, a keynote speaker, and now a proud granddad on a mission to leave a legacy.
Everyone's looking for the highlights and the peaks. Life is really just that day-to-day drudgery in between the occasional peaks.
Julian shares his simple but profound mantra, own up, wise up, step up, and shows us how courage, discipline, and storytelling can cut through the noise in a world that won't stop changing.
Do not wait around for motivation. You're looking in the wrong place.
I do what I need to do, and that's why I'm where I am. If you've ever wondered whether it's too late to start again, or felt the weight of doubt holding you back,
fix nervous with service. When you go out and you go, this is not about me, all of a sudden you realize you can't fail.
We all know that life is full of noise, so I've invited this week's guest, Julian Mather, here to help us refocus on what really matters in life. Julian, welcome.
Hey, I'm stoked to be here. Always nice when somebody wants to have a chat with you.
Look, I was planning this episode and, when I invited you and you obviously so graciously accepted, I thought this could rival one of the longest episodes or longest podcast episodes ever, because you're a great storyteller. You've got a life well lived with so many changes and so many roles that you've had. But so many of them just tie so beautifully into the strategy and the vision of this podcast and what we want listeners who are listening today to get out of it. So I'm really looking forward to diving in.
All right, fire away.
Perfect. Julian, tell me, what does the noise of life mean to you?
Oh, the noise of life. I think the noise of life is life. We hear everyone's looking for the highlights and the peaks and but really, as John Lennon said, life is really just that day-to-day drudgery in between the occasional peaks. I haven't understood that all my life. I understand it now. I'm learning to, like a lot of my life, I wasn't present. I was always working on what I was doing, but part of my head was always into the next thing. Like it was this continual, rolling machine that was going along. And there's nothing, that's a good life. There's nothing wrong with that. But now I understand to be present, and I'm a first-time granddad now. And I really, when I'm with my little, 1-year-old grandson, almost every afternoon, I get there and I go, I am the happiest I think I've ever been in my life, because I don't want to be anywhere else. And so just understand, you say, the noise of life. It's like I finally realized that what I'm like, just every moment, what can you extract from that without overthinking it? Can you just be present? So, yeah.
And I think that's a challenge for a lot of people, is actually being present these days, right? Like everyone's, they're at a meeting, but they're thinking about the next meeting. They've got their new car, but they're already thinking about the next car. They've achieved a goal or they've hit a goal, but they're actually all already on the way to the next goal, right? People don't actually take time to be present in where they are.
Yeah, and it's difficult. When I was younger, like I said, I was not good at it. And I think I'm 64 now. So, a lot of this comes with age. The more I read and talk to other people about this, somebody said the other day, I've forgotten who it was, like getting older is finally becoming the person you were meant to be. Like there's so much truth in that. You get to a stage where you go, well, I'm just not willing to put up with all the crap anymore. And you sort of get to the essence of who you are, and you're a bit more. You've got permission. You've given yourself permission to be that. So, with this age. Don't feel bad if you're listening to this and going, oh, geez, I wish I could be present. I think that is part of the process.
And it takes one step, right? So I always say if anyone hears anything on a podcast or if they're reading a book and they pick up something, it's about not trying to overwhelm yourself with changing everything, right? But what's one thing today I could just sit and be present on? It could just be sitting in your front garden watching an ant, right? Or whatever it is. It's just something where you actually just brings you back to the now.
Yeah, I mean, I'm very much like, you mentioned podcasts. I mean, I start almost every day with going for a walk and listening to podcasts. I just find, I'm very much on owning your learning. We're living in a time now where it was once your boss's job, to teach you things and, give you the training, but not now. It's yours. You can't wait around to be taught. In fact, I just posted about this today. And my way of doing that is what I call footpath university. So every morning I just go out for a walk for 45 minutes to an hour and I listen to a podcast. And I would say 3 out of 5 podcasts I listen to, I learn something.
Yeah, 100%. And things that you can implement or change or something. For me, when I listen to podcasts or read books, it just one thing I go, wow, that's a great way that they've put that. And it shifts a perspective in my mind.
Yeah, and it's all about joining the dots as well, because a lot of the things that you hear, you think, oh, that's really, useful and important, but, you go ahead and forget it. But sometime, down the track, there's all these dots just come together and you go, oh, right, now I get it. Now I can use that. And one of the things that I do, and I started this probably about 6-7 years ago, is I make note. Anytime I hear something really useful, I actually stop on my phone and I make a voice note or just type, text note. And then I go back and I file it all because otherwise I never use it and I just don't remember it.
So talk to me about, looking back to, your kind of childhood and the younger years, what do you think you missed out on as you grew up around being present?
I would say nothing as a kid. I don't think I had the wherewithal to even, have the concept of that. I mean, I would say as a kid I was very much, I'm a selfish person. Like I like to do what I like to do. I get an idea and I just got to go, I got to run with this, it's almost an urge to get it out and to make it happen. And I was very much like that as a kid. Not that I did anything other than be a kid in, a suburb, but anytime I, got an idea that, I wanted to take my bike out and pretend I was a speedway rider or something. Well, I go, well, right, where's some flat mud? And I just go cycling and find somewhere next to, a creek, like a bit of a mud flat, and then, find in amongst the grass somewhere that I could link up a bit of patches of mud together and make my own little speedway. So I don't think I miss being present. I think I was very present as a kid. Where I wasn't present was in school. I certainly, school did not work well for me. I wasn't a bad kid. I love learning. I absolutely love learning, but I just didn't want to learn what they were teaching me at school. So, one place I wasn't present was there.
I think I'm yet to find someone that's ever spoken on one of my episodes that's actually said school worked for them, but I might come across one, one day.
Well, but that's interesting because most, school is about, it's very binary. There's a right answer and a wrong answer. And what we do at school is we process you through the system until you get the right answer. And so, if you fit that system, and plenty of people do, that's what, you like the rules, you like that process, it sits well with you, and you come out and you go to university and you get a corporate job. And I would suggest that you don't have them on the podcast because those sort of people don't go on podcasts. Like they're just part of the system. And I'm not saying that in a right or a wrong way. I'm not criticizing those people. But to me, it's very clear why you don't hear people, on your podcast talk about that.
Yeah, you're so right. You're so right. Julian, I look at life around when you talk about the noise of life. I remember I was thinking about this, when I rebranded this podcast, and I was thinking, right, when I was younger, like what was the first thing that I can remember hearing? You know, what were things when I was a kid and I was in that innocence? What would I listen out for? And, you know, one of the things I'd be like, okay, I'd listen out and you'd always know if the ice cream truck was coming around, right? And it was down to get an ice cream or whatever it is. And then you'd hear the bin man on bin days. And over the years, a lot more noises obviously come into our kind of into our presence, I suppose, or into our environment. Was there a time, you know, kind of through your life where you think that life switched to being, you know, noisier? Like, is there a point where you went, wow, life is, you know, life is pretty serious?
Yeah. Okay. I can go. I'm just trying to think back about. See, to me, it wasn't noises. I'm a very visual person. And strangely enough, it was smells. I can remember, you know, like you were talking about the ice cream truck. I grew up. My father was English, but he was born in India, and all my uncles and aunties were all born in India, and they lived there. And I actually have Indian relatives. So that was very much a big part. And so my father, being this, he grew up with a slightly Eastern mindset. And part of that, we didn't eat much meat or drink, you know, milk in the house. But there was always a smell of curry, and it was vegetable curry. And so like when I had friends over, they'd all come into the house and go, "Oh, what is that?" If I went to their place, I'd smell roast lamb, and I'd go, "Oh, that's amazing." But they got curry. And the other thing I remember as smells was my father was an artist. He would paint in oils, and oil paint has this really distinct, quite wonderful smell to it. And the thing is, it takes ages. It takes months and months to harden off to dry. So we'd always have this smell of curry, of oil paint. And the other thing about the oil paint was we're always told as kids, don't touch it. Don't touch Dad's painting. Because, of course, what do you do as a kid? You go and touch it. And if you touch oil paint, like it sticks to your fingers. And so, of course, what do? You wipe it under your armpit on your shirt. And so when they see the paintings were touched, all right, who touched the paintings? They go, it wasn't me. They go to the laundry basket. You look at the laundry. You always know which kid touched the painting. But as far as was there a point in my life? I remember when I was in the army. So I was in the army from about 18 to 21 years old. And I remember standing on the grass. I actually can visualize this in my mind because I could look through the open door of the shower block and see all the colored tiles on the wall of this shower block. And I remember standing there thinking, wow, this is amazing. I am learning something new every day. And that was, like this one point where like I was a learner and I was so excited. Not the noise of life, but I thought I could see the world open up with possibility. I was thinking, my goodness, with what I'm learning and how this is improving me, what's it going to be like when I'm, 30, 40, 50 years old? But of course, life doesn't happen like that. It starts to plateau. Your learning starts to plateau after that. So, but, I don't know if that's an answer to what you wanted, but they're clear points that I can remember. Now,
you obviously mentioned the army and you were a sniper.
Yeah. So I know it sounds strange, and when I've still got my sniping handbook, and like it's got the characteristics of a sniper in there. What these people make good snipers. I'm not going to get it for you now, but I can remember it. It says must be able to calmly kill a man at a distance of up to 1 kilometre, and. That's not me, but yeah, I ended up doing that job. And how I ended up doing that job was that, like I said, I wasn't good at school. So I used to wag school, but what I wanted to be was a photojournalist. And so I took myself to the state library when I wagged school, and I read every book on photography and every book on photojournalism. And sometimes the lessons are written between the lines. Well, what I realized about photojournalism was it never happened in Brisbane. I never read any of these books. There was never a picture of Brisbane in there. So I thought I've got to get out of Brisbane if I want to be a photojournalist. I started to think, how could I do that? I was walking down a street and I saw an army recruiting poster on a bus shelter, and it had these soldiers walking through a forest, but it was a pine forest. And my simple little, mind said, oh, it's not eucalypt trees. That must not be Brisbane here. That must be somewhere else. Maybe I should join the army. So I walked in and said, do you need photographers in the army? And they said, oh, we certainly do. Sign here. So I signed there, and that's when the yelling started. And it was, I ended up in the army, and I said, oh, what about the photography thing? I said, oh, no, we've got a better place for you over in the infantry. And I'm like, what am I doing here? And they were going to put me in radio comms. And I said, because I was a stutterer, I should have, put that point in the story, I was a stutterer. And I said, you're joking, aren't you? I'm the only guy in the platoon who gets a standing ovation if he finishes the word sergeant. And you want to put me in radio comms? And I went, I'll go and lie over there in the long grass and just keep quiet. And that's basically how I became an army sniper.
Did you do any tours, like active tours?
Oh, no, it was all in peacetime. And, when you're young and dumb and stupid and gung-ho, it was all like, oh, we just want to get over there. We want to be part of it. And I just now, in hindsight, go, that was the biggest blessing, because I look at so many people, and I know, really clever, smart, together people who come back and just really struggle after seeing, live action and just being in, active war zones. So lucky me.
I think if I look at a number of your roles, and we'll go through some of those, but, with your army, being a sniper, your video work, a lot of things is really around focus, right? Like in many of those roles, you would have had a very, very strong focus on your target or what you were shooting.
People say, I was never good with a rifle. I'd only picked one up maybe, once or twice, before I ever joined the army. But when I got in there, what I'm very good at is actually listening to what people are telling you, apart from when it's in school, and following the actual instructions they give you, not the instructions that you've rewritten in your mind to fit you, but to follow the instructions, the process. And they can teach you how to shoot. And if you actually follow it, and I'm very good with self-discipline. And I went, right, okay, step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, step 5, step 6, and do that every time. What do you know? You can start hitting targets. And of course, sniping is not just accuracy. It's really, there's navigation, there's judging distances, there's camouflage and concealment, there's stalking, the shooting. There was one more. It was a really tough course. It was one of the toughest courses in the army. And it's really cutthroat. You're given 42 tests, 6 subjects over 7 weeks, a test on each subject every week. And if you fail one, you're out. It's just, completely sudden death. And I got through right to test number 42. And I remember it was camouflage and concealment. So it's grown up hide and seek. And so you've got this person with a set of binoculars, and a walker, a guy with a radio, and their job is you have to go and hide, and it's their job to find you. And they say, go, you can't go more than, 300 meters away, and you can't go, past that big tree and past that fence line there, go hide. So I'm running off, and one of the other sniper candidates gets to my hiding place, but I had my second spot, lined up, and I ran to that, and somebody else got to there. So I ended up in the middle of this field on a slight hill in this long knee grass, high grass. It was really dry. It was like the middle of summer. And you had 5 minutes, and I heard 3 minutes, 2 minutes, and I'm starting to panic. So I just dropped down in the long grass, and I'm in this long grass. Have you ever looked through a pair of binoculars and you can sort of see through leaves, and it's an optical trick, but you can, all the stuff in front of you blurs and you can see quite clearly through it. Yeah. Well, through the sniper sight, I could see through the grass to where the target was. And, I couldn't see it clearly, but I could just see it enough. And I thought, I'm in with a chance. I'm in with a chance. And what happens is one by one, they try to find you. And if they can't find you, you have to let off your first shot. And then what happens is when you fire a rifle is that there's two things that give you away. One is glint off your telescopic sights, and you can camouflage that with this like cloth and scrim that you can get rid of that. But the thing that you can't hide is muzzle flash. And this is that big, like 18-inch orange flame that comes out of the end of the barrel behind the bullet. So I let off my first shot. And I'm thinking as I squeeze it, there's going to be a big, long, yellow, orange flame coming out. And I'm in this dead grass. And I'm thinking, like nothing's going to give my position away more than a spontaneous grass fire in the middle of this field. But anyway, it didn't catch on fire, lucky. But they could hear where I was, and they walked the walker, this guy with the radio, over to me. And what they have to do is be able to walk the walker to stand on top of you. Now, this guy who was the spotter, who was looking for me, he knew I was there in that grass somewhere. He couldn't put the walker on me, so I had to squeeze off a second shot. I squeezed off the second shot. They couldn't find me. And then if they can't do that and they don't believe that you can see them, they do what's called the color test. And they hold a little 50 millimeter by 50 millimeter square of cardboard up. And there are 6 colors, and they choose one of those colors and they put the color of this cardboard on their chin. And you have to look through your sights, and they give you 5 seconds, and you have to identify the color just to prove that you can see. Now, I'm looking through, and all I can see is this waving grass and a bit of an outline. I really can't see them. And so 5, 4, 3, and I remember something, somebody told me once, don't give up. The best thing to do is the right thing. The next best thing is the wrong thing, but the worst thing to do is nothing. And so I got down to 2 seconds and I couldn't see it. And I just took a shot that if I can't see it through this grass, it might be green. So I said green. And I hear that over the radio, green is correct. And that is how close I got to not being an army sniper.
Wow. That's an awesome story. Now, Julian, you spent like 27 years, a large part of your life as a cameraman.
Yep.
Obviously, you did some amazing travel.
Yeah, I did. So I worked for ABC TV and National Geographic and BBC. And I mean, I love documentary work. And the reason that, like we were saying before, school is binary. There's a right answer and a wrong answer. And I don't subscribe to that. You go to news, it's always, this is what happened. That's okay. But if you get into current affairs, it's, this happened. Here's one person and here's, another, an expert's opinion on it to counter it. But life's not black and white. Life's gray. That's how I see the world. And documentary enabled me to go and explore the complexity and the nuance of life. And that's why I gravitated towards that. And yes, I did go to great places. I mean, just fantastic. But it was the people in front of my lens who really influenced my thinking so much. And like I mentioned, I was a stutterer. And I had very, little self-confidence and honestly, low self-esteem a lot of my life. And a lot of that came from, not being able to say what I wanted to say. And I used to see these people in front of the lens and I was just mystified, like how did they know what to say? What skills did they have? And, and I felt small. I wanted to be playing a bigger game. I had ideas in my head, things I wanted to say, and ideas I wanted to get out there. And I just studied them basically for 25 years quietly. It was my own anthropology lab. And, I'd look at what they did and, I'd look for patterns. And, over the years I found there were, certain things that they all did that were all common to these. And when I say successful people, fulfilled people, I mean, it's not as though, they're not all great sports stars. They're not all, great, politicians or, great politicians, they're not all, captains of industry. I just worked with people from so many, areas of life and levels of life and socioeconomic standing, but the people who got up and did things all showed a couple of common characteristics. So I just honed in on those, and I started to do them myself. And after 25 years or so, behind the camera, I started to think I wanted to be in front of the camera. But I was so impressed that these people were out there doing things in the world, changing other people's lives, and absolutely acting on their convictions. And, there was somehow, I just wanted to be part of that. I didn't know exactly how or why or where, but I just knew I wanted to be part of that.
And what were the characteristics? You mentioned the characteristics of some of these people. What were they? What were the biggest things that kind of landed for you?
So I call it own up, wise up, step up, and own up, wise up, step up. And it's this I use my 3 fingers. I use this every day of my life. So own up. Accountability isn't punishment. It's power. So stop blaming others for where you are and start taking responsibility for where you're going. That is how you take your power back. Because, we want to go and do things, but, we get into this victim mode. Oh, you don't understand. My situation's different. And yeah, I mean, that's all true. But anyone I ever met who was out there doing these things had taken control of their lives, even in terrible, terrible situations. So that was the first thing, own up. Then the next thing you got to do is wise up. And this is like adaptability, particularly now. Adaptability is the new job security. So stop waiting to be taught and start learning, unlearning, and relearning. Now, that is how you're going to make yourself valuable in a fast changing world. And I mentioned before, I do this every day of my life with Footpath University. I get out and I take learning as my responsibility. And then the next thing you got to do is you got to step up and, you got to actually, make this happen. And change isn't easy, but it's not Everest. Right? You don't need a heroic leap. You need a daily dose of mild discomfort. That's how you build the confidence to do things you never thought you could do. And they were the 3 things: own up, wise up, step up. And I saw this over and over again. So this basic process, I've got, I own up. I've actually got, next to my bed, a little sheet, and it's just 4 simple lines. And I remind myself, because I wake up with bad, like anyone else. It's not working. I hear myself saying the words, I can't do this. So I go like, well, hang on a minute. And I really own up, this is, I've got to get back in control. And I start that within the first, literally 30 seconds. That I wake up every day, and I just got to refocus and get myself back on that track.
That's awesome. We could almost end the episode there, because I think that is something that people can apply, and just a very simple, the accountability, learning, wising up, and then stepping up. Just so simple, but so effective.
You got to do it every day. People wonder why they can't do things. And I used to wonder why I couldn't do as well, is because we get hooked into this idea. We mistake our feelings for actions. And so, you've got this, Stephen Pressfield wrote this book, The War of Art. And he talked about, what stops creative people, what stops you writing something, or writing that book you wanted to do, or making that podcast you wanted to do. And he calls it this resistance. And it's this thing, with 1,000 names for it. It shows up in your life 1,000 different ways, but it's all those things that stop you doing it. Like it's this weird stories in your head, excuses you make up. There's this resistance that holds you back, but that's all based in feelings. You hear it in your language. Oh, I don't feel like doing that today. But the other end of that, of doing something, is self-discipline. And self-discipline is doing things without feelings, without emotions. And so there's this scale of being, attaching, being crippled by your feelings, and at the other end is actually doing things without emotion, without feelings. And when, you start understanding this and you realize that it's just, okay, well, if I want to get something done, I've got to get rid of, separate those feelings from it. And self-discipline comes in, which is just small little acts every day of doing all the little things you don't want to do to be able to do the big things that you do want to do. There's no mystery to this. And this is, again, it's one of the things I saw. All these people in front of my camera, used to, turn up, say, oh, can we come and, film with you on Monday morning? Oh, Monday morning I can't. I get up and I go for a run on Monday mornings, and then I go to the gym after that. Well, how about on Wednesday night? Oh, on Wednesday night I can't do that. Like, they always had things that they were doing on set schedules and calendars, and it was things they didn't particularly want to do a lot of the time, but they had worked out that this is how you actually get things done.
And I was actually chatting to someone yesterday. We were talking about, Usyk, the boxer, and there's a great clip on him talking about not motivation, it's discipline. I'm disciplined. I do what I need to do, and that's why I'm where I am. It's not motivation, because someone asked him, oh, you're very motivated. He said, it's not motivation, it's discipline. I know what I need to do to achieve what I need to, to achieve what I want.
People get confused about motivation all the time. So motivation is not an input, it's an output. So people go, right, if I can just get the motivation to get going, it's not an input. Don't wait for motivation. It never comes. So what you do is you go and you master self-discipline, just like the boxer was saying, and you start doing it. And then what happens is that you start, the process and doing it daily, these things that you don't want to do. And then something happens. You get a result, and it's normally just a small result, but all of a sudden you go, oh, something's happening. And that then triggers the motivation. And then what happens is motivation becomes an anesthetic for hard work, which enables you to do more of the self-discipline. So you start with the actions, you get some small results, then you get motivated by those small results. Then that becomes an anesthetic for you to do, and it becomes this circular process. So do not wait around for motivation. You're looking in the wrong place.
Now, Julian, you mentioned about you were behind the camera and you decided you wanted to get in front of the camera. Tell me about that shift.
Yeah, so I ended up in Banbury on a documentary we were shooting about the effects of crime. And I went to a school called Drayton Comprehensive. Now, Drayton Comprehensive is a tough sort of a school. I'll just give you an idea. Gordon Ramsay, the celebrity chef? Yeah, well, he used to go to school there. So if you imagine a whole lot of teenage Gordon Ramsays, all angry and lippy running around, that's sort of what the school was like. They had a policeman stationed at the school named PC Graham Waddington. He was there as part of a proactive policing campaign, and I was going to be filming him talking to these kids about a problem they had in the school, which was aerosol sniffing. And so I found myself at the back of the classroom. PC Waddington was at the front, and it was a room full of these unruly kids. And then he just started telling them stories. And then all of a sudden, the whole tone of the room came down, and all the kids were hanging on his every word. He wasn't talking at them or above them or below them. He's just talking with them. And I got sucked into this, and I was hanging on every word he was saying. And then the bell rang and the magic was broken. And his kids had their bags in the classroom. There were tables and chairs scattering everywhere. So they all headed for the door. And from my position in the back of the room, I was the only person who saw this. I saw 3 kids walk past his desk, reach into their bag and take out a can of aerosol and leave it on the desk. And I went, wow, because I had filmed many, many government initiatives spending millions and millions of well-meaning dollars that didn't achieve much at all. Yet he was one man standing in front of a room full of kids for 25 minutes who stopped 3 kids putting aerosol up their nose that day. And I went, wow. Something went off in my head. And I said, I'm going to be doing this one day. I don't know how. I don't know where. I don't know why. I just know that I'm going to be standing in front of people, effecting change somehow in a direct way. And then, I ended up going, life went on and years went by. And I ended up working on a documentary about philanthropy. And I got really involved in this idea. And so when we were shooting other projects and we're setting up, you set up lights and camera, you got to have a bit of small talk to, to smooth it over. So I'd ask people, and they could be, leaders of businesses, captains of industry, anyone, like, what do you know about philanthropy? What do you think about that? And they would go, two answers that would give me back. One, I don't really understand it because it's more an American sort of phenomenon. And the second thing was, I'm going to do that when I retire. And I think, no. You're in a position where you can affect real change now. You've got your hands on the levers. Do it now, but it would fall on deaf ears. So I started to think, well, if I can't teach the old dogs new tricks, can I teach the young pups new tricks? And I hatched this idea to teach the concept of philanthropy to school children. Over a couple of years, I got this program going and I walked away from my TV career and I took this program into schools to deafening silence. They all went, the schools went, oh, very virtuous, Julian Mather. What a wonderful idea. But have you got anything we need? Like a science program, like a maths program, an English program. I learned my first lesson about business. Never open a restaurant unless you got a starving crowd. I just didn't understand this. Anyway, my TV career had sailed off into the distance by this stage. And I tried to keep this thing alive. I gave it, CPR, mouth to mouth for about 18 months. And I had to pronounce it finally dead. And then I had a problem called rent and I had no money. So as a cameraman, I always carried a couple of magic tricks in my camera vest because get this, apparently people don't trust the media. I know. So a couple of magic tricks, get them laughing, a little bit of that. That worked wonders. So I doubled down on these really basic magic skills that I had. And I ended up being a children's and family magician for 5 years. I did 2,000 magic shows that came out of that. But it was not what I wanted to do. I wanted to be standing in front of people affecting change. And I was terrible. This when I started, I had so much stage fright. My hands, I kid you not, would literally shake like this. And I always remember I went on to Google and I typed in how to overcome stage fright. And it came back at me and said, there's this old trick you can use. Imagine your audience naked. And I thought that is the worst advice ever to give to a children's entertainer. So I kept, I kept at this, but it's not what I wanted to do. And I ended up putting some videos on YouTube and really didn't go back until about 6 months later. And all these people were watching these videos. And I went, this is good. And I made some more. And I ended up with a successful YouTube channel called Julian's Magician School. Got about 30 million views and 140,000 subscribers. It's still there. I haven't been on it for like 7 years or so. But part of that was I would look into metrics. And I got this big surprise because this was a channel for kids, but there was a spike in the metrics from males 35 to 55 years old. So I reached out to them and said, who are you? What are you watching this for? And I got a huge response back, 33,000 words. I did a word count on it. And they said, we know how to do tricks, but you show how to present them and put them together in a routine. So I said, well, if I built a product called Build Your Magic Show, would you buy it? And I said, yes. So I did. And I ended up with this successful, first online successful course. And and then, so what happened after that was I got an email in my inbox and it was from this guy in the UK named Ken Kelly. And I didn't respond to it for a month. I thought, I just couldn't be bothered, but I finally did. Turns out the smartest and best thing I did. Because have you ever heard the story of a kid who is finds a pendant. It's a half a pendant with a jagged edge, and his quest becomes traveling the world trying to find the person with the other half of this pendant. So that was like Ken and I, because when you put the two parts of these pendants together, kazam, you get these superpowers. That was like Ken and I. What we achieved together, balancing and playing off each other, was far greater than either of us would have done together. We were able to build this business called the Kids Entertainer Academy, and we sold it then to a company in Israel. So I went from knowing nothing about business to being able to sell a business. And so when that was over, I still had one thing I really wanted to do, and that was to stand on stage and speak to people. And this sort of ties in now to what you were saying before. You were saying all these things you've done. You said focus, I think. Focus is a common thread. That's right, but it's not true. Most people don't get this, and because you're not seeing it from my side. So I was a stutterer. I had no confidence. I had low self-esteem. And everything I've done, army sniper, cameraman, magician, have all got one thing in common. They gave me something that I could hide behind when my confidence started to, not be strong anymore. And so as a sniper, behind the sights, and I could just go and be antisocial for days and weeks at a time. As a cameraman, it was like this big thing I could put in front of me anytime I didn't feel confident. It was like professional at work, do not disturb. Wonderful. And magic, even though I did 2,000 shows, I learned a lot about stagecraft and I got good at it. The magic has props, and anytime I felt unsure of myself, I could put the attention on the props and away from me. And I wanted to be able to stand on stage and speak to people with nothing between me and my ideas up here. And so for, the last 8 years or so, that's what I've been pursuing, a career as a keynote speaker. And here I am.
You just had me in tears of laughter then, because that is just so freaking funny. I could listen to you seriously all day. We obviously enjoyed plenty of great stories when we did Leanne Hughes's red carpet camp out, and we were just hanging on every single word. And so at the end of the day, you're like, life is all about storytelling. If you want to sell something, it's telling a story. If you want to connect with someone, it's telling a story. You've harnessed that power.
And thank you. And that's not natural. And it surprises people because I came out of a TV career doing documentaries. Yes, I was a storyteller. I was a visual storyteller, but I really didn't understand the power of learning how to tell a simple story and what the structure is and what the process around that is. And that's, that I've applied myself to that for 15 years or so. I was terrible at telling stories. I'm this sort of person, like honesty and trust and truth are really big in my life. And it might sound a bit Pollyanna-ish, but it's true. It just is. So I would always tip the outcome, like the punchline of a story. When I did magic tricks, I'd want to tell people how I did it because I didn't want them to feel that I was manipulating them. And, I've learned that actually manipulating people for a positive outcome is one of the best things that you can do for them. And part of that is storytelling. So if you think, I'm just going to tell the story and this happened and that happened. No, there are more effective ways that you can do it, and you manipulate people's emotions along the way. And the outcome is they benefit. So just know that if you think you're not good at storytelling, yeah, you can be. You just got to have a desire to go, okay, I know my first one's not going to be very good, but I know my 20th one is going to be better and my 100th one's going to be way better than that. And it gets going. So, really, and like you say, it is an essential skill. And here's something that a lot of people don't realize. If you're in the world of business, you look at a CEO And you think a CEO's, needs to know, business and finance and have an MBA and have all that. Possibly true. But the greatest skill a CEO, a leader can have like that is storytelling, because they have to go out and be able to sell the story to investors to get people excited. It's such an important skill. As a parent, just being able to have this story, rather than telling your kids, don't do this, do this. If you change that into a little bit of storytelling, you're going to get much better results from, your interactions with your children. And it goes on.
One of the things that I found from like a storytelling perspective and, sharing your message is that there's a point where people finally reach their power. And I think it's a point where they get to a point where they just don't really give a shit about what anyone else thinks about, because you're going to have the people that criticize you. And, a lot of the time that can give you self-doubt, but they reach a point where they go, and for me, my whole strategy is, if I tell a story, if I share something, if it's just that one person that needs to hear it today, did you reach a point where, you said you weren't a natural storyteller, but did you reach a point where you were like, I'm going to share it, I don't give a shit?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things I did is I went to Toastmasters when I first decided I wanted to speak, and I was 6 years there. And it's an absolutely wonderful training ground for speaking. It solves, to me, the biggest benefit of Toastmasters is if you want to speak, you need an audience. You try finding an audience, and Toastmasters gives you an audience weekly that you can stand in front of. And you go through their structured process. But one of the problems, and when I say problem, don't get me wrong, this will make sense in a moment, is Toastmasters is all about you or I, what I get out of it. And so you get up there and then they help review what you've said and give you tips to make you a better speaker. And so it is all about yourself and me. I'm going to be a better speaker and be a better speaker. And now I'm in professional speaking. Professional speaking is all about you or them. It's about the audience. It's about helping people. Now, of course, you need all the skills to be able to stand up and do it. But that flip for me is when I got out of it all being about me, this being about my part of the journey to wanting to be a better speaker, not have something in between me and the audience. And when I got into serving other people, there's a great term that I learned for this: fix nervous with service. And when you fix nervous with service, when you go out and go, you know what? This is not about me. It is about helping you solve an issue, a problem. Now, I'm going to do that using the tools of storytelling because I know how effective that can be. But the kicker here is that when you actually do this, when you go out and you go, this is not about me, all of a sudden you realize you can't fail. Anytime I go on stage, I go on there now with the sole intention going, can I help? Because I speak about change. I have a topic called changeability. Can I make your life less painful in a world that won't stop changing? And I'm going to do my best up here now. So if I get up there and I mess it up or it doesn't work or whatever, I can't fail. I'm trying my hardest to help you. And I know I've never had anyone who said, oh, I don't want your help. Like they might go, the timing's wrong or something like that. But people don't come up and go, don't try to help me. So if you get into the service mindset, it is absolutely wonderful. And you'll find that all these fears and anxieties that you have about everything being perfect just slowly start to melt away. They don't disappear completely. It's just like a base level noise down there. I get a few butterflies now and then, but generally I just flick that switch and go, right, I'm going out and I fix nervous with service.
Yeah, that's perfect. Now, all through your roles, all through the different chapters, there's this power of reinvention. Talk to me about that.
Yeah. So what I decided probably, and this was really when I left my TV career, and then, that project, the philanthropy project failed. It was called the Thumb Program, THUMB. Think of others, help when you can, use your noggin to make your school a better place. This is the basis of philanthropy. And so, that didn't work. But what I learned about myself was that my love of learning is greater than my ego. And what I mean by that is, true, I just love learning. I love going on a new adventure, and I'm willing to trade my status. So, when I was in I was pretty, I was very well, top of the ladder in, the world of TV documentary work. And I was willing to trade that, everything that came with that, the benefits of status, to go back to square one. I always think of it like a game of snakes and ladders. That, you spend all this time trying to and you get to that last row and you go, oh, please don't land on the big snake that takes me back. That's what it was like. And I go, but I'm willing to go on that and go back to square one and build my way up again with no connections, no status, no, little knowledge, because I love the learning. And so I'm continually on this journey of reinvention. Now, that said, I'd be absolutely honest about this. That makes it difficult on your income, because with my speaking, I'm going out there and I'm speaking, and I know I speak really well, and I know the audience really respond to it, but it is hard to build a business. So I'm competing with people who've been building a professional speaking business for 20 years. I've been in it 5 years, seriously, so you would expect me to be here and them to be up there. And that's exactly what's happening. So, just be wary. If paying off your income, your mortgage is the number one thing in your life, don't follow my lead. This works for me, but that's why I've continually reinvent myself. And right at the moment, the thing that I'm doing is now I'm a new granddad. So I've started this project, a thing called the Best Granddad Project, because I want to be the best granddad I can be. I've got a young grandson; he's a year old, and I see this. There's this gender wars out there, and they go, both sides are fighting against each other, and they go, and there's this thing that men aren't just part of the problem, they are the problem. And I look at my beautiful little 1-year-old grandson and go, this is not you. So I can't sit by and idly let him go, go into this world that's, evolving as it is. So I want to be part of that and affect and step up and be part of the change I want to see. So that's what the Best Granddad Project is. It's me learning out loud, trying to be the best granddad I can be. But the point about that is that this reinvention, if people follow along the Best Granddad Project, you'll see how I reinvent myself every time. It's messy. I don't know what I'm doing. But we go back and we talk about motivation. We talk about failure, all these things we were talking about before. This is me living it out in real time. I don't know how it's going to turn out. It might be the biggest pie in the sky idea, not that I've ever had. I've had some other ones I haven't even mentioned that haven't worked. But, that's part of the process. And that's something I learned from people in front of the lens who were successful or fulfilled, was this idea about failure, getting good, getting comfortable with failure, because the successful people never have one idea. They have a number of ideas in the pipeline because they expect half of them, if not more, are going to fail. And so you just keep getting, building things up, and it's easy to do now. The cost of doing things online, if you've got a bit of an idea, there's so much, it's almost next to nothing to get going. So you can test ideas, and eventually you're going to have a lot of failures, but you'll get one or two that work. I hope this Best Granddad is one of the ones that work. I'm very passionate about that. But again, watch me if you want to as I go along, because you'll learn a lot and you'll start to see, oh my goodness, God, if that bloke can do it, well, I can probably do things I never thought I could do.
Yeah. Yeah. Julian, obviously moving through all these roles, moving through life, now getting to, being the best granddad project, right? And having the podcast, which you're about to launch. I think it's fantastic for those listening right now. And I'd also probably bring it into your grandson as well, is that if you had to sum up some things from a perspective of life lessons, life advice, what were some of the top things that you would put in place?
Oh, gee whiz, I would say never. So it's very important to decide what your metric of success is. Now, I mean, this is very easy for me to say because, like I said, I'm 64 now. I've been thinking about this for the last, 10 years or so. But very early on, I mean, I was like most other people. I went to school and I was told that if you didn't get a university education, if you didn't get the good job, if you didn't get the status and all that, somehow, yeah, well, that's great. That's great. You were doing what you were doing, but somehow you failed. And that's absolutely wrong. When you change your metric of success, so my metric of success isn't a fancy house, a fancy car, or, whatever that may be, a certain amount of money in the bank. I decided that my metric of success was lack of regret. And with that as my metric of success, I walk into almost every room and I feel like the richest person in the room. I know from what I've done, my backstory, that few people can, and it's not, I'm not challenging people to that, but, so I've ended up in life feeling really rich and fulfilled. And, I'm doing okay money-wise. I don't have the wolves at my door or anything. But thinking about it might, along your journey that you go on, reassessing what is important to you and starting measuring things by that, I would say. And then, talk about regret. That's one of the key things in my life. They say that psychopaths are people who don't regret anything. Well, based upon that, I'm a psychopath. I don't regret anything. Now, bar a couple of things I've said to people who are close to me. I just should have shut up, and I said something hurtful. I wish I hadn't said that. But regrets that I did, that I walked away from my career in TV. No, I don't regret that at all. That's how I've become the person I am. That it's through adversity and difficulty that you rise and you reach up to things, and you then, fulfill the possibility and fulfill that opportunity that's been given to you. Heaps of failure, but don't not do things because you might regret how they turn out. Just go along and, stumble. We're all stumbling. And the other thing is stop putting people on pedestals out there. We all look around and we look at other people, and particularly online now, with curated lives, and we think people are geniuses. We think they're just lucky, wonderful, all this. No, they're not. And I know this, and I can say this with authority because as a documentary cameraman, I got to be with people for extended periods of time, for thousands and thousands of different types of people. And here's the truth. Everybody struggles. Everybody has got, behind the facade, you go back there arguing with their wife. The kids won't do things. They've got problems with it. Everybody struggles. So, you're in a good starting position. And the other thing is stop thinking that you're behind the eight ball. You think, oh, my situation, you don't understand. I don't have the connections. I don't have the education. I don't have this. The top is way less crowded than you imagine it to be, because most people never act on their hopes or desire. They never start. So simply by starting taking steps where you don't know, you are so far ahead of most of the population who sit there and go, one day I'm going to write a book, one day I'm going to do this, and they never do it. just by doing it. I reckon you put yourself in about the top 5%. So stop being so hard on yourself.
Yeah, 100%. And it always makes me think of Les Brown. You know, he talks about the richest place on the planet is the graveyard, right? Because it's full of inventions that were thought of but never created, you know, songs that were never sung, you know, stories that were never shared, you know, ideas or concepts that were never brought together. And I think that ties into what you're saying there is just freaking start, right? Like if you've got an idea, it might not work out, right? But just like your analogy on the snakes and ladders, right?
Yeah.
An idea might take you along 3 spaces and then, okay, it'll pivot you up a snake, but then something else will take you down a ladder, like all these different things, right? Like sorry, I think
there's a word for that.
I think it's down the snakes, up the ladders, isn't it? It's been a long
down
time
the snake,
since I played it.
There's a word for that. Life.
Yes.
That's what it is, you know. Yeah, you know, go. Any other, just one more thing about what we're doing here and talking about this, which is in this sort of like self-awareness, self-help sort of category. And a lot of people think that's woo-woo. I'm not a woo-woo person. I'm a very nuts and bolts person. So, you know, like if you think, well, yeah, but, you know, I feel a bit awkward, embarrassed, you know, yeah. There's many ways to approach this, but you know, if you don't approach it, it comes back to this regret. You know, if you don't go, well, okay, well, what don't I know? Is there a different approach? If you don't actually act on this and start going forward, you're going to end up like so many people on their deathbed, just regretting not the things they did. All the research shows this, that people who are dying, they regret the things they never tried.
Yeah. And I think one of the key things that, you know, when I started to launch a podcast and I had so much self-doubt and I thought, you know, and I went and looked at the Jay Shettys and the Mel Robbins and all these big podcasters, you know, even, you know, some of the guys that have been doing it for, you know, Joe Rogan. And I thought, hang on, I'm day one. I'm actually not even day one when I was thinking about it. I'm going to go back and I'm going to listen to their first episodes, not their current episodes. And what I found is actually a lot of the top podcasters, some of their first 10, 20, 30, 40 episodes, they've deleted because they're obviously not happy. They weren't happy with them, right? They've gone back and went, oh God, there. But it just shows you that, you know, where you start, everyone starts in the same place, right? People aren't born with the knowledge. You know, someone who's a speaker and a great speaker on stage doesn't just wake up one day and become that, right? They've all got stories of crap, absolute crap presentations early on in the start where they, you know, stuffed up and they lost their train of thought and they made all these mistakes. A cameraman, you know, someone in front of camera, you know, like the newsreaders, right? They would all have stories of where they stuffed up or they did something wrong. And one of the key things, though, I say to people, if you're up speaking, or, you know, I say this to some of the new cycle instructors at my gym, when they come and they get on the bike and they've got 20 or 30 of us, you know, riding our bikes at 5:30 a.m. in the morning, and, you know, they make a mistake and they say, oh, sorry. I say, we don't know you made a mistake until you say sorry, right? A lot of the time, it's kind of like, just own it, you know, just carry on, right? And I think the ability to carry on and not have that, you know, oh, I'm sorry, we all make mistakes. Most people don't actually know you've made a mistake because you're the only one that actually knows what you're supposed to deliver.
And what you were saying before about the podcasts, about the top podcasts, you know, people go, well, you know, I'm going to jump in, and they try it for a little bit and it doesn't work and they give up and they go, well, you know, see, it doesn't work for me. And it's very, very hard. You've got as much chance of having a successful podcast now as you have of being an NBA player in the USA. It is such a small percentage who are going to break through. But all the successful ones, you look, they've been going for a long time, by and large. So it's another thing, you know, you're asking about what I would tell people is that stop expecting that stop thinking so short term. every change I've made in my life, I work on what I call the 18-25 rule. And that is, I expect things to take about 5 years. And every year has 365 days. And I just have to have a daily dose of mild discomfort every day for 5 years, 365 times a year. That equals 1,825 small doses of daily mild discomfort that I have to take to go from being one thing to the thing that I never thought I could be. And, by and large, that works. So, whatever it is you want to do, stop thinking, like in 6 months' time. Think in longer time frames. And again, when that was one of the things that I found with so many people who were in front of my camera, when I looked at them, things always take so much longer than you imagine they're going to take.
Yeah, 100%. And I always say, what is enough and what do you need, right? Like everyone's going, I want 10 million subscribers and I want all these things, right? And you go, like, there was an agent, because I come from a real estate background, there was an agent many years ago and he said, you only need 300 clients, really good clients in your database to have a successful career, right? Meanwhile, everyone's out there trying to build thousands and thousands and thousands of contacts. He said, if you just have a smaller network, that's all you need to deliver you a successful career. And I think that's in a number of things, like everyone's chasing more and more and more, but what do you actually need? What is enough for you? Because what's enough for me is different to what's enough for you, Julian. We're all different.
Yeah. And if, people are talking and thinking about, doing stuff online now, you've also got to keep up with what's happening. Is that we're going out of this social media economy, which was all based upon the number of likes and followers and, in volume. It's now the interest, it's going into interest media. So you can start as somebody who has got no followers, and the algorithms now are dishing up the content that people want based upon their profile, but it's to satisfy their needs. Whereas it used to be, or currently still is, but it's moving out of, is like if you have a bigger following, you will get shown to more people, the right people. It is moving out of that. So you can come in from almost week one, and if you've identified, I've got something to say and I know people want it, the algorithm is going to feed your stuff to the people who are asking for it. So, understanding where things are going. And it doesn't take much. Okay. What does it come back to? It comes back to going for a walk every morning and listening to podcasts, and you can find this stuff out.
Yeah. Is it the Footpath University?
Footpath University, yep.
That is awesome. Julian, I've appreciated your time today. It's been awesome to catch up again. You made me cry and laugh a few times because that's just what you do with how you make people feel. And I'm sure people that have been listening and watching this have got that as well. So many insights, so much wisdom, which I knew you were going to bring to the episode, and that's why I invited you on. So just a big degree of gratitude for you, because I know so many people would have taken so much away from today's episode. The highlight reel would be huge. The sound bites around just some real key things. But if you had to sum up what your clear message is, what would that be?
The clear message is that in a fast changing world, if you resist change, you're going to lose. But if you're willing to embrace change, you're going to win. It's very important to understand that now.
Yeah, perfect. Now, Julian, those that want to reach out to you, connect with you, what's the best way for them to do that?
JulianMather.com, or all my handles on all the platforms are at Julian Mather. And if you want to go and check out Best Granddad, it's bestgranddad.com.
Perfect. Awesome. And we'll put that all in the show reel notes as well. So once again, thanks, Julian. I look forward to catching up again soon.
It's been a blast.
Thanks, mate.